Good morning. I have finally finished the third surah in the Quran, so let's have a chat about what I thought. So first off, and this is just very generic, I found this surah overall just a little bit less engaging than Al-Baqarah. I felt like Al-Baqarah was very cohesive. It flowed really well. All of the stories kind of like were well grouped together and then merged into one another really well. Whereas this one just felt a little bit less cohesive. It was a little bit more jumpy. I did really like some of the verses and some of the stories in here. This surah talks about the birth of Maryam or Mary, and I have just realized that this is the first time I have seen a woman's name mentioned in the Quran. So I know in my video about Al-Baqarah I mentioned Adam and Eve, and I've actually since learnt that Adam's wife is named Hawa. But her name isn't mentioned. Her name wasn't mentioned. She was just referred to as Adam's wife. And here, Maryam's mother, Imran's wife, is just referred to as Imran's wife. So how come Mary, or Maryam, is given such status that she's referred to by name? The other two women that we've read about weren't deemed important enough to be given their names. So I don't know if this is like a spoiler alert for the rest of the Quran, but I have a question. So I obviously use other sources. I use a YouTube channel called Project Zamzam all the time whenever I'm reading and studying. And in their videos, they mention, you know, Hawa by name, and also Maryam's mother is Hannah. So how do we know their names? Are they mentioned later in the Quran? Do we get that information from external sources, from other literature? Like, where are these other women's names? How do we know what their names are when they're not mentioned explicitly so far in the Quran? Let's talk about some of the verses that I've really liked. So I'm gonna go through and show you guys all the ones that I marked with a sticky note, because these are the ones that really stood out to me. So the first one is part of verse 20. It's about halfway down, and it says, if they submit, they will rightly be guided, but if they turn away, then your duty is to only deliver the message. And I think this ties in really well to one of the verses in the previous surah where it states that there is no compulsion in religion, right? So it is not the Prophet Muhammad's duty to force people to convert. He's only there to deliver a message. And whether they take that message on board or not is, I guess, up to them. This is another instance where it's saying like there's no compulsion. It's up to you whether you want to believe it, whether you want to submit, whether you want to live by it. It's up to you. Muhammad is only a messenger. I've actually already discussed this one, so I'm going to skip it. This is the one about splitting into sects. And I feel like we dove down a big rabbit hole with the sects and the hadith, and I've decided that, you know, the hadith are probably too complicated and too much for me to take on right now, and I'm going to stick with just reading the Quran. So I'm going to just leave that for now. A lot of you left really good feedback, so I'm going to just leave it until the end. I think it's just a little bit too complicated. Okay, so 195. This one, just, I read it and I was like, Palestine, the people of Palestine. If you guys watched my first video, you'll know that I'm reading the Quran because I was just so moved by the resilience of the people of Palestine. They are currently going through probably one of the worst atrocities anyone could ever imagine living through, yet they are still so steadfast in their religion. Like, if it was me and I was a religious person and all of these horrible things were happening to me, I would be questioning whether a God exists, not being driven further into my faith. So it was seeing all of those videos that really made me interested in learning about Islam in the first place. And when I read this verse, I was like, oh my God, this is them right here. So this is 195. And it said, so their Lord responded to them, I will never deny any of you, male or female, the reward of your deeds. Both are equal in reward. Those who migrated or were expelled from their homes and were persecuted for my sake and fought, and some were martyred, I will certainly forgive their sins and admit them into the gardens under which rivers flow as a reward from God. And with God is the finest reward. Verses like this have to be why they are so steady in their faith. Also, 198, I'm not going to read the whole verse. I mean, the whole verse is quite beautiful, but it's just this little section. It refers to paradise as gardens under which rivers flow. And it's just so, I don't know why, but that's just so beautiful. And the very last verse of this surah, 200, it says, O believers, patiently endure, persevere, stand on guard, and be mindful of God so you may be successful. I feel like there's actually some more. I didn't tag them, but they are probably highlighted. I posted a video. My last video is just a slideshow of photos of some of my favorite highlights, and there are a couple in there. There's more than the 2 that I just read, but there are a couple in there that I felt like really relate to the humanitarian crisis that's going on in Palestine right now. This surah here is answering some of the questions that I had in my very first video when I had absolutely no context and I hadn't read a single word yet. And I was like, how are the people of Palestine so faithful? How are they so willing to put all of their trust in God when they're going through these awful things? And I think this surah right here, number 3, it has some of those answers.